triggering every NFL fan base. NFC edition. Arizona. Your franchise has been around for over 100 years and has nothing to show for it. Sure, history says you won 2 championships in 1925 and 1947 when they picked random bums off the street to play in games, but nobody gives a fuck about those. The high points for your team over the last 70 years were a fluke Super Bowl run that ended when you gave up a game-losing touchdown with 35 seconds left and an NFC Championship game appearance where you lost by 34. The best and most beloved player in franchise history is Larry Fitzgerald, a stat compiler who has a choir boy image despite having a protection order filed against him by his baby mama. I bet you didn't know that, did you? Your current QB isn't tall enough to go on rides at Six Flags, and your head coach looks like he belongs in Bang Bros videos instead of standing on an NFL sideline. He couldn't even manage a winning record with Patrick Mahomes as his quarterback at Texas Tech. Your GM also likes to drive drunk. Atlanta. You blew a 25-point lead in the final 17 minutes of a Super Bowl without even giving up an onside kick. That shouldn't even be possible, and yet you did it. And to make matters worse, you did it to Tom Brady's team, meaning we now have to listen non-stop to how he shits golden bricks, all because you doofuses didn't just run the ball and kick a fucking field goal inside the Pats' 25-yard line in the fourth quarter. Oh, and great job letting a Super Bowl clinching interception fall into Edelman's hands. Wonderful. Don't worry, it gets worse. This was the high point of the best run in team history while having the best quarterback in team history, Matt Ryan. Before Matt Ryan showed up, you never had back-to-back winning seasons in 40 years and one Super Bowl appearance where the Broncos beat the fuck out of you and your star defensive player got caught soliciting an undercover female cop for sex the night before the game. The most iconic and memorable player to ever wear your team's jersey is a guy who electrocuted dogs for fun. For the rest of time, you will have big names on offense and still finish 7-10 every year because your defense is softer than baby shit. Fuck you. Carolina. Cam Newton is one of the most overrated quarterbacks ever and looks like he's in physical pain every time he throws a football. Speaking of pain, it physically hurts me to look at his passing numbers outside of 2015, when he won a fraudulent MVP thanks to a random hot stretch against shitty defenses and tons of short fields. Dabbing was the dumbest trend to hit the NFL in recent memory, and I thank the Broncos defense for ending that in the Super Bowl. Fuck John Casey for kicking that goddamn ball out of bounds to make Tom Brady's life easier. Your former owner Jerry Richardson was a perv, and your former wide receiver Ray Caruth hired a hitman to kill his pregnant girlfriend. Your team also allowed Greg Hardy to play after beating up a woman. Steve Smith is beloved even though he has serious little man syndrome and assaulted not 1, not 2, but 3 teammates in his career. One was beat up so bad Smith got sent to jail for it. What a fucking hero. Sam Darnold is your current starting quarterback. Chicago. The last time the Chicago Bears had a great quarterback, Hitler was still alive. This is how I know Justin Fields is going to suck, because it's literally illegal for the Bears to have a good offense. Even if Fields does somehow become a good quarterback, it won't make up for passing over Patrick Mahomes in favor of Mitch Trubisky in 2017. Bears fans today still brag about 1985, even though that team should have been a dynasty instead of a one-ring wonder that never got back to another Super Bowl for 20 years. Walter Payton is the best and most beloved player in team history and is hailed up as a role model by everybody, even though he was unfaithful to his wife many times and acted like a little bitch when he didn't get a touchdown in the Bears' Super Bowl win. Mike Singletary couldn't cover anybody, and Brian Urlacher played like a pussy against the run. Dallas. The Dallas Cowboys are the most overrated franchise in sports. Every year we are subjected to your shitty, overrated, mediocre team on national television 7 to 8 times. If I had a nickel for every time the camera panned to Jerry Jones' decaying corpse in his press box, I would have more money than Jeff Bezos. Congrats on your success in the 70s and 90s, but what have you done since Tupac died? 3 playoff wins in the last 24 years. 3. The Texans have more playoff wins than you in that span, and they didn't even exist until 2002. Mark Sanchez has more playoff wins than you in that span. Yes, he of butt fumble fame. And yet, there you are, on national television just to finish 500 or worse. I'm sick of it. Tony Romo never won shit and was a choker. Dak Prescott only does well against shitty teams. Zeke Elliott is a fat slob. Michael Irvin almost killed a teammate with scissors. Emmitt Smith is a moron, and your team employed Greg Hardy after all his bullshit was known to the public. Your first-round pick this year, Micah Parsons, is a certified weirdo. He's your head coach, so unless you have Aaron Rodgers on your roster, you aren't winning shit anytime soon. Detroit. Congrats, Lions fans. Your team employed both Barry Sanders and Calvin Johnson over the last 30 years and have just 1 playoff win to show for it. In fact, you have just 1 playoff win since 1957. You are irrelevant. Nobody's been afraid to play the Detroit Lions since Dwight Eisenhower was president. Your fans idolized Matthew Stafford like he was amazing and not a mediocre stat compiler who never won any big games. Seriously, Lions fans, what was the biggest win for you during Stafford's 12 years with you? A Week 3 game against New England in 2018? Sure, Stafford didn't have many good defenses or good run support, but he had very good receivers, and if he was truly as elite as Lions fans say he is, he would have won at least 1 playoff game. Even Tim fucking Tebow won a playoff game. Now that Stafford is gone, you're stuck with Jared Jared Goff, who doesn't know how to wipe his ass without Sean McVay assisting him. Good luck. Green Bay. No team has done less with more in recent history than the Packers, who have just 2 rings and 3 Super Bowl appearances since 1992, despite having had 2 quarterbacks who combined to win 6 MVPs. 2 rings is nothing to sneeze at, you might say, but the Ravens have just as many rings with Trent Dilfer and Joe Flacco. That's unacceptable. It's even more unacceptable that through sheer dumb luck, the best quarterback of all time fell into your laps in the 2005 NFL Draft, and you have just 1 Super Bowl appearance to show for it in his 11 full seasons as starter. You refuse to be aggressive in free agency during Rodgers' prime or be proactive in coaching changes with Don Capers and Mike McCarthy. Instead of getting Rodgers' help in the draft while on the cusp of the Super Bowl in 2020, you drafted his replacement. In Rodgers' 9 playoff losses, you've given up over 35 points per game, 5 times giving up over 37 points. 3 other times Rodgers led a game-tying drive in the 4th quarter just to never touch the ball again thanks to your defense giving up the game-losing score. And also a devastating home NFC Championship game loss in 2020 where your team gave up 31 points and the offensive line collapsed in the 4th quarter. Remember when Brandon Bostic cost you a trip to the Super Bowl by trying to be a hero on an onside kick? If not for Rodgers, you would have been bottom feeders over the last decade. Wisconsin is a shitty state and most forms of cheese smell like the inside of an asshole. LA Rams. You have a young prodigy at head coach and arguably the best defensive player the NFL has seen since Lawrence Taylor, and yet what do you have to show for it? A fraudulent Super Bowl appearance where you scored only 3 fucking points? You finally got rid of Jared Goff and replaced him with Stat Padford, who hasn't won an important game since Pop Warner. Your salary cap is going to be in hell in 2022 after you fail to win anything this year. We'll hear the typical Stafford has no help routine. Much like the Chargers, you were transplants from another city, so nobody in LA gives a fuck about your team. If there are any Rams fan holdovers from St. Louis, just know I fucking hate you too for helping launch the Patriots dynasty. Your team has lost 2 Super Bowls to Tom Brady, where Brady's offense scored just 13 points. Did you know that's the only 2 times in Super Bowl history a quarterback won leading his offense to 13 or fewer points? Congrats, you stupid fuckers. You have 1 measly ring to show for the insane collection of offensive talent from the greatest show on turf years. That's as good as your worthless team will ever get. Minnesota. The Vikings are only relevant for about 1 to 2 years every decade when they lose in the NFC Championship game, either in devastating fashion like 1998 or 2009, or by getting the ever-loving shit kicked out of them like 2000 or 2017. The other 8 to 9 years are spent floating around in mediocrity with a few awful seasons sprinkled in. By the way, the Vikings have lost 4 Super Bowls in addition to all these conference championship game losses. Anyway, your quarterback is plexiglass-loving nutjob Kirk Cousins, who has great stats, yet you would never trust him in a big game. Outside of New Orleans in 2019, of course, since every quarterback has had their hallmark moment against Breeze's Saints. Cousins typically destroys bad teams, so you will never be terrible with him, but his ceiling is low. Justin Jefferson is going to be a stud, sure, but the value of great wide receivers has always been overstated. Adrian Peterson is the best player you've had over the last 15 years, and he beat the shit out of his infant children like they were animals. Never forget the Love Boat saga either. Oh, and one last thing. Randy Moss is not better than Jerry Rice. Moss was washed up by age 33, while Rice was a 1,000-yard receiver in his 40s. End of debate. New Orleans. The Drew Brees era is finally over, and it represented both by far the best era in team history and so many missed opportunities. First off, fuck you, Drew, for having your worst performance in a Saints uniform against Tom Brady's team in the 2020 playoffs. Your team went all in over the last few years to win a second ring for Brees and didn't even make the Super Bowl. Sure, you got screwed by the refs in 2018, but your defense choked badly in 2017 and 2019 against Minnesota, and then Brees shit his pants in 2020. Now you are finally going to feel the wrath of prolonging all of that salary cap shit. Your backup quarterback is Diet Tim Tebow, aka Taysom Hill. Sean Payton will always generate a good offense when he's not busy popping pills, but your team blew its window to win another ring, and it won't be relevant for the foreseeable future, unless Aaron Rodgers finds his way there next year. Fuck you and fuck your shitty ass gumbo. New York Giants. I want to thank the Giants for helping my Eagles win 2 games most years for the last decade or so. Daniel Jones is terrible and just fumbled again. Saquon Barkley is the equivalent of having a beautiful HD TV in a burning house. Your coach Joe Judge is a wannabe Belichick disciple who gets off on telling grown men to run sprints. Your team is so fraudulent they don't even play in the city their team name says they do. The best player in your team's history is Lawrence Taylor, a massive drug addict, registered sex offender, and deadbeat father. What a fucking loser. Imagine being a grown man wearing his jersey to a game. Disgusting. Memorabilia fraud Eli Manning was a painfully average quarterback and interception machine whose entire legacy is due to his defense having 2 dominant stretches in January 2008 and January 2012. The fact that he's even mentioned as a potential Hall of Famer is an embarrassment. He didn't break 20 points offensively in either Super Bowl win. He never won a playoff game where his opponent scored scored over 20 points, and he didn't win a playoff game outside of his 2 Super Bowl years. Simply put, you have no real direction, and despite your team's reputation as a blue blood franchise, you haven't been a consistently great team since the Parcells-Belichick era over 30 years ago. Philadelphia. As an Eagles fan, this is tough for me to roast my own team, but it must be done. I honestly never thought we'd win a Super Bowl in my lifetime, so winning it all in 2017 was obviously amazing, but it came at the cost of Carson Wentz's confidence, which in turn began to rot the team from the inside out, especially when Nick Foles came in and almost led the team to the NFC Championship game again the next year. By 2020, after another ill-timed injury in the 2019 playoffs, Wentz devolved into the worst quarterback in the league and was jettisoned to Indy. Now we're stuck with a glorified H-back and Jalen Hurts at quarterback. All of our wide receivers that we draft highly always turn out to be dog shit, so I'm not expecting much from Devonta Smith, who is so tiny he will fly away if you leave a door open near him. Doug Peterson turned out to be a fraud, and our future looks pretty bleak. Eagles fans are also largely douchebags who cheer injured opponents. Sure, we had our moment in the sun in 2017, but before and after that, it's been nothing but playoff heartbreaks and disappointment. San Francisco. Kyle Shanahan is a great offensive mind who is also largely responsible for 2 of the biggest fourth quarter collapses in Super Bowl history. This is his 5th year on the job, and he's lost double-digit games 3 times in his first 4 years. Sure, you guys made the Super Bowl in 2019 and might have won it if Jimmy Garoppolo didn't suck, but at some point, the consistency has to come for Shanahan to earn the praise he gets from the media. Speaking of fragile porn star fucker Jimmy G, his time is almost up in favor of rookie hotshot quarterback Trey Lance, who played 1 year of Division I AA ball against Farmers at North Dakota State. Bold move to make him the future of your franchise. I doubt it works out. Your defense has a lot of talent, led by Fred Warner and fresh off of an ACL tear Nick Bosa, who is very close to becoming the NFL's version of Aubrey Huff. But this is an offensive-driven league. Overall, the last decade in San Fran has been weird. You've either been agonizingly close to winning a Super Bowl or complete shit. And speaking of shit, there's a lot of it on the streets of San Francisco. I highly recommend not going there. Joe Montana was a fragile system QB whose backup replaced him and put up even better numbers than he did. Seattle. Fuck you for handing Tom Brady another ring. God damn you, you stupid coffee-loving losers. Why did you call that fucking play? Run the ball. Okay, now that that's out of the way, it was on the 1-yard line and you blew it. You needed 1 more yard and Marshawn Lynch was in your backfield and you threw it? I'm sorry, it's just a lot to handle. It's fitting that despite Russell Wilson evolving into an elite quarterback since Super Bowl 49, your defense has gotten progressively worse at the same time, and you haven't been back to an NFC Championship game in 6 years. Your team has become letting Russ do whatever he wants and then figuring it out from there. Wilson starts off every year putting up historic numbers, getting MVP praise, then comically falling on his face. Maybe one of these years he'll finally be consistent enough to win one while also making an NFC Championship game without a top 2 defense. Pete Carroll looks like Brandy Love and is a 9/11 truther. DK Metcalf's career highlight will always be a play that has nothing to do with him catching a football. The city of Seattle has devolved into an absolute war zone thanks to shitty political leadership, and Starbucks tastes like hot ass. Tampa Bay. For all of the very few Bucs fans who existed before Tom Brady came to town, the following rant does not apply to you. I absolutely hate Tom Brady and his fans. He is the most overrated player in sports history. He consistently gets credit for things he has nothing to do with, and he consistently wins playoff games where he plays like dog shit. See literally half the playoff games last year. There is mountains of evidence and stats I have to support these claims, but I've already made several videos on this already, and I don't want to go into too many details here. No, you see, Tom Brady and his fans are a gigantic cancerous blob that completely destroy everything they touch. Notice how the Bucs aren't even viewed as a team anymore. They're seen as Tom Brady and a bunch of faceless teammates who exist solely to help him win more rings. The Bucs defense held Patrick Mahomes to 9 fucking points in the Super Bowl, and afterwards, the defensive players on the Bucs were asked how Brady helped them. We have to hear non-stop about Brady's inspirational text messages and his fraudulent junk science diet with his whack fraud trainer all the time. We constantly have to hear how badly Brady wants to win and how hard he works, as if he's the only fucking player in the league that works hard and wants to win. We have to hear about how he's a hero for taking pay cuts even though his wife is worth $400 million. His fan base is a cult full of people who live unfulfilled lives. Because they are unsatisfied with their own lives, they live vicariously through Brady, since Brady has lived a life full of unprecedented amounts of privilege and good fortune. They see any criticism of Brady, fair or not, as an attack on them and their worthless livelihood. In response, they will ruthlessly attack people and their families in any way they can. I know this firsthand. Brady's unprecedented and undeserved success has completely ruined sports discourse forever, and the worst part is that it's not done yet, as Tampa is set up perfectly to repeat as Super Bowl champs this year. I hope I'm still around to witness an NFL without Tom Tom Brady, an NFL where great quarterbacks with remarkable talent are rewarded instead of a minimally talented, unprecedentedly lucky cheating fraud who thrives off of defensive pass interference flags, checkdowns, short fields, and freak occurrences to win. A fraud who lets accused rapists like Antonio Brown into his home around his kids, takes government loans to buy yachts during pandemics, and gets women pregnant before leaving them for a supermodel who looks like a man. I don't care how many rings Brady wins, he will never be the best quarterback of all time. And I hope you Bucs fans know that once Brady is finally done squeezing all the juice out of this super team in Tampa Bay, he will discard you all like a used condom. Fuck Tom Brady. And if you root for Tom Brady, fuck you too. Washington. How the fuck do you even slander a team that's literally called football team? As an Eagles fan, I rarely see Washington fans ever pop up in anything. It's almost as if they don't even exist. As long as Dan Snyder is in charge, you will never win anything. Even the rare years where you make the playoffs, you always barely sneak in and get destroyed immediately once there. The only time in the last 30 years there has ever been any sort of hope for the future in DC was during RG3's rookie year in 2012. Then his knee did the stanky leg in the playoffs and he was exposed without his freakish athleticism to aid him shortly thereafter. Your entire franchise is just one big joke. Even though Ron Rivera is an easy guy to root for as head coach, he will probably be fired in 2 years. At least this year we don't have to listen to announcers talk about Alex Smith like he's a Make-A-Wish kid every time he drops back to pass. Your team has a legit defense and a budding future superstar in Chase Young, but we all know that doesn't mean much in the big picture. There has never been any stability since Joe Gibbs retired for the first time after 1992. Hell, even 2 of the 3 Super Bowls your team has won came in strike-shortened seasons that have asterisks next to them. Despite everything I mentioned, and despite how terrible Snyder is, your team might still be better run than Congress, which says a lot about this country. Fuck this, I'm running for president.